has made Sean Combs a little bit nervous.
To me on that, when you say, yeah, he looked like the gay homie, I didn't know what you were talking about.
No, I wouldn't go to... Do you think this might be too early?
Much detail he could go into about his testimony. And because the 8 people in the videos, the 8 celebrities in the videos were allegedly victims of sex crimes, we know who they are.
John Diddy Combs walked into the courtroom yesterday wearing a sweater over a white-collared shirt and gray slacks. He hugged his attorneys when he got in.
Apologized, saying, "Sorry, Your Honor, I'm a little nervous today."
8 celebrities, 6 men and 2 women. How many of those 8 celebrities were close to being underage or potentially underage?
2 men.
Diddy walked into that courtroom like it was a runway, not a battlefield. Cool, composed, and dressed to impress. Crisp, tailored suit, dark designer shades, the swagger of a man who thought he still ran the room. On the surface, it was a all-boss energy. But beneath that polished exterior, the tension was thick, undeniable. You could feel it pressing down, a silence that warned something heavy was coming. Then it hit. Out of nowhere, audio from 50 Cent's upcoming Netflix documentary blasted through the courtroom speakers. No warning, just boom, straight to the bio gut. The opening lines dropped like a bomb. Phones slipped from hands, heads whipped forward, and the entire room froze. The air got sucked clean out. Diddy's vibe flipped in real time. That smooth, unbothered mask, gone. His jaw tightened, his body stiffened, eyes wide for just a split second. Enough to see the panic crack through. The clip? Casual, playful, too playful. Diddy's voice came through, laughing, talking about wanting to take another man, shopping, offering to pay, suggesting they kick it, just the 2 of them, in a vacuum, maybe harmless. But in this moment, with everything already swirling around his name, it hit different. Real different. The courtroom wasn't hearing just words, they were hearing context, implications, a whole new narrative slotting into place. The reaction was instant. Smirks vanished. Whispers turned to stunned silence. Even the press in the back, seasoned reporters who'd seen it all, were suddenly scrambling, typing like their careers depended on it. They knew it. This was the headline. Diddy sat frozen, eyes forward, not blinking, not breathing. For a second, he looked like he didn't even register it. But then the judge gave the nod to continue playing the clip, and that's when it cracked. His jaw clenched, his hands locked around the edge of the table like he was bracing for impact. Then, snap. Diddy jumped to his feet, exploding across the courtroom, his voice sharp, furious, unraveling fast. "This is taken out of context!" He shouted, accusing 50 Cent of chopping the footage to humiliate him, pointing fingers, throwing accusations, trying to claw back control. But it was too late. The judge slammed the gavel. Chaos erupted. His legal team rushed to contain the fire, whispering, pulling, pleading. But the damage was done. That calm, untouchable persona, shattered. Gone. What remained was a man cornered, exposed, and spiraling, while the world watched.
Statement is something from, you can tell it was written by a lawyer. Because there's a point where it kind of gets aggressive.
And here's the wild part. It wasn't just a documentary. That Netflix project? It was a setup from day one. A trap dressed in high production and streaming hype. 50 Cent didn't just stumble into the timing, he engineered it. Dropped the doc exactly when Diddy's name was already getting dragged through legal mud. Coincidence? Not a chance. It was a precision strike. A chess move from a player who's always 5 steps ahead. As both the producer and narrator, 50 controlled the narrative. And this wasn't about legacy or accolades. This was a takedown, masked as storytelling. The doc wasn't entertainment. It was a weapon. It sliced deep. Each episode peeled back layers the public was never supposed to see. Whispers turned into on-camera confessions. Hidden truths dragged into the spotlight. But the hardest hit? That private audio, secretly recorded, dropped like a final blow in the middle of a storm. What seemed like a casual, harmless convo turned into a courtroom nuke. Diddy's words, off script, off guard, and once they played, everyone sat up. The tension didn't just rise, it detonated. Exactly how 50 planned it. Say what you want about him. Master troll, marketing genius, ruthless operator. He's all of that. But this time, it's bigger than beef. Sure, he and Diddy have danced around each other for years. Sneaky jabs in interviews, cryptic social posts, a cold war of ego and dominance. But when the legal fire lit under Diddy, 50 didn't post memes. He went nuclear. He didn't tweet. He built a whole Netflix documentary stacked with receipts, evidence, testimonies, clips that hit harder than any diss track ever could. And he didn't just expose Diddy's public face. He tore into the private one. The side industry insiders protected, the version no one dared to show. It's pulled the curtain all the way back and burned it. So is it personal? Hell yeah, it is.
Various charges against him. The three main ones are racketeering, basically extortion, sex trafficking, and the transportation of people across state lines.
But it wasn't just a hit piece. It was a spotlight. A mirror held up to the glittering, untouchable world of fame, power, and the toxic silence that surrounds it. And the wildest part? It worked. Loud and clear. The fact that the judge even allowed that audio into evidence? That said everything. This wasn't just some clip. It was a bomb. A cultural detonation that flipped the courtroom upside down. It didn't just provide evidence. It changed the entire tone of the trial, because this wasn't casual. This wasn't harmless. It was raw, unfiltered, and deeply revealing. All the whispered rumors, the "did you hear?" backroom conversations, suddenly they had a voice. And it was Diddy's. As his voice echoed from the speakers, the room didn't just react. They froze. It wasn't just cringe. It was potentially incriminating. One of the most jarring moments came when he said, clear as day, "Yo, why don't we go shopping? I'll pay for it." Casual words. But the tone, the vibe, off, way off, no hesitation. No filter, no boundaries. It didn't land like a joke. It landed like a move. And the worst part? He said it like it was nothing. Like the power dynamic behind it didn't even register. The silence that followed was deafening. You could see people struggling to make sense of what they just heard. But that was just the start, because it wasn't just one line. It kept going. Talk. About kicking it, about playing with someone's booty in Miami, and then, out of nowhere, this twisted string of sentences. But I don't have that thing where well, we ain't had no thing. I wasn't sending nothing at him. Big, if it was on the street side like that, we would be actively doing things to each other. That was the line that made the entire room shift. Heads turned, eyebrows raised. Reporters looked up from their keyboards like, did he really just say that? These weren't just awkward comments. They were patterned. And when played against the backdrop of the allegations already circling Diddy's name, they hit different. Toxic behavior, power plays, manipulation. These are the things people had been whispering about for years. Now, it wasn't whispers. It was evidence. By the end of the audio, the courtroom wasn't just buzzing, it was shook. People weren't questioning his judgment anymore. They were starting to believe. The rumors, the stories, the suspicions, the dots were finally connecting. That tape didn't just dent Diddy's image. It cracked it wide open. For the public, it was a turning point. No more speculation, no more guessing games. This wasn't about what someone heard from someone else. It was his voice, his words. And once it played, he couldn't control the narrative anymore. The tape did the talking, and in that moment, the courtroom shifted. The energy flipped. The prosecution had been relying on allegations, building a case out of shadows and testimonies. But now, they had something real, something they could point to and say, this isn't random, this is a pattern. Diddy's. Defense, once solid, suddenly felt shaky. Because once the truth starts speaking in your own voice, there's no silencing it.
You go out to the prison and will you visit him just for funsies?
I don't know. Look, because you think of it. Right now, he can feel like I'm his enemy.
What? Yeah.
Why would he feel that way? I mean, I'm not his enemy. The federal government.
For that polished image, gone. The usual playbook, deny, deflect, distract, it couldn't stand up to Diddy's own words. And this wasn't just about one awkward line. It was bigger, way bigger. That audio didn't just embarrass him, it confirmed everything people had been whispering about for years. Controlling behavior, blurred boundaries, toxic power plays. What used to live in shadows was now out in the open, amplified through courtroom speakers, with Diddy's own voice leading the charge. And for the prosecution, it was gold. No longer was this just a case built on shaky testimonies or past drama. That clip gave the story structure. It showed a pattern. And patterns? They stick. Because this wasn't about a single mistake. It was about a man who moved like the rules didn't apply. That recording painted a picture of someone who'd been skating by on charm, clout, and silence for years. But now, the silence was broken, and people weren't guessing anymore. They were watching it unravel in real time. The fallout came fast and hard. Diddy's credibility? Shattered. His defense team looked blindsided, scrambling for footing as the courtroom turned ice cold. They tried to pivot, tried to spin, claiming the audio was out of context, that it didn't reflect who he really was. But nobody was buying it. Because this wasn't secondhand gossip. This was him, unfiltered. On tape, and the reaction in the courtroom? Unmistakable. People glanced around like they were checking to see if others were as stunned as they were. Even seasoned reporters looked shaken. You could feel the shift. In that moment, Diddy stopped being a celebrity on trial and started looking like someone whose empire was truly cracking. His lawyers tried damage control, fast. A public statement hit the press before the courtroom had even cleared. Same old lines. Taken out of context. Misrepresented. Misunderstood. But it was too late. That explanation didn't land. It couldn't, because the tape was the context, and it didn't leave much room for interpretation. It was raw. It was uncomfortable. And it exposed exactly how Diddy operated when he thought no one was listening. That's what made it so damning. Then came the media storm. The clip hit the internet like a lit match in a dry forest. News outlets, gossip blogs, industry insiders. Everybody had it. Everyone had a take. Audio snippets looped on every screen. Every podcast, every late-night segment. Experts lined up to dissect every word, every pause, every tone shift like it was a national scandal. Because by then, it was. The courtroom chaos wasn't just news. It was entertainment now. The kind that keeps people glued to their phones, waiting for the next bomb to drop. Diddy's trial stopped being a legal matter. It became a cultural event, and he was no longer in control of any of it.
Now, Fifth, when you continuously call Puff gay, does that affect your relationships in Hollywood?
I don't call him gay. I said,
Let me read it.
If it wasn't just a legal bombshell, it was a full-blown media circus. Diddy wasn't just on trial in court anymore. He was on trial everywhere. The courtroom became a stage, but the real show was unfolding in the streets, on timelines, and in newsrooms across the globe. This wasn't just a case. It was a spectacle. The kind of moment where everything pauses and the world tunes in to watch a giant fall. The streets were buzzing. Social media caught fire. Everyone had something to say. It wasn't just the content of the audio. It was who it came from. Diddy, the mogul, the mastermind, the untouchable icon, was now very touchable. Exposed, vulnerable, and facing allegations that couldn't be spun into sound bites or swept under some PR rug. And the reactions? Split right down the middle. Loyal fans came out swinging. Day ones, the ones who grew up on Bad Boy, who watched Diddy turn hip-hop into a business empire. They weren't having it. To them, this was a setup, a hit job. Another chapter in the IDI, long history of powerful black men being torn down in the public eye. They said the audio was twisted, taken out of context, chopped up to destroy him, and they weren't backing down. Not now. Not ever. But the flip side? That was colder. Some fans felt straight up betrayed, blindsided. That audio wasn't just shocking. It was personal. For them, it felt like watching a hero collapse in real time. Years of rumors, stories brushed off as gossip, suddenly had weight. Suddenly, they didn't sound so wild anymore. And that betrayal? It hit deep. Social feeds were packed with reactions. Think pieces, IG lives, Twitter threads, long captions under old concert footage. People weren't just angry, they were hurt. Questioning everything they thought they knew about a man who had shaped so much of the culture. And it wasn't just the fans talking. The industry started chirping too. Some artists stayed silent, not wanting to be part of the storm. But others, they couldn't hold back. Whispers turned into public comments. People who had been quiet for years began speaking in subtweets, interviews, even live streams. There was a shift in the air. One where the code of silence that had protected Diddy for so long was starting to crack. People who once praised him as a genius now hesitated. Brands began to distance themselves. Some collaborators started pulling out of future projects. A few even deleted old posts or scrubbed their names from joint ventures. Quiet moves, but loud messages. The empire wasn't just taking hits in court. It was leaking from every angle. And through it all, Diddy remained in the storm's center, his voice echoing in clips, his face splashed across every headline, but no longer in control of the narrative. The court of public opinion had taken over.
Be a life sentence. The sex trafficking is 15 years minimum, and the transportation for prostitution purposes is 10 years minimum. So
it wasn't just a legal bombshell, it was a full-blown media circus. Diddy wasn't just on trial in court anymore. He was on trial everywhere. The courtroom became a stage, but the real show was unfolding in the streets, on timelines, and in newsrooms across the globe. This wasn't just a case, it was a spectacle. The kind of moment where everything pauses and the world tunes in to watch a giant fall. The streets were buzzing. Social media caught fire. Everyone had something to say. It wasn't just the content of the audio, it was who it came from. Diddy, the mogul, the mastermind, the untouchable icon, was now very touchable. Exposed, vulnerable, and facing allegations that couldn't be spun into sound bites or swept under some PR rug. And the reactions? Split right down the middle. Loyal. Fans came out swinging. Day ones, the ones who grew up on Bad Boy, who watched Diddy turn hip-hop into a business empire, they weren't having it. To them, this was a setup, a hit job. Another chapter in the long history of powerful black men, being torn down in the public eye. They said the audio was twisted, taken out of context, chopped up to destroy him, and they weren't backing down. Not now, not ever. But the flip side? That was colder. Some fans felt straight up betrayed, blindsided. That audio wasn't just shocking, it was personal. For them, it felt like watching a hero collapse in real time. Years of rumors, stories brushed off as gossip, suddenly had weight. Suddenly, they didn't sound so wild anymore. And that betrayal? It hit deep. Social feeds were packed with reactions. Think pieces, IG lives, Twitter threads, long captions under old concert footage. People weren't just angry, they were hurt. Questioning everything they thought they knew about a man who had shaped so much of the culture. And it wasn't just the fans talking. The industry started chirping too. Some artists stayed silent, not wanting to be part of the storm. But others, they couldn't hold back. Whispers turned into public comments. People who had been quiet for years began speaking in subtweets, interviews, even live streams. There was a shift in the air. One where the code of silence that had protected Diddy for so long was starting to crack. People who once praised him as a genius now hesitated. Brands began to distance themselves. Some collaborators started pulling out of future projects. A few even deleted old posts or scrubbed their names from joint ventures. Quiet moves, but loud messages. The empire wasn't just taking hits in court, it was leaking from every angle. And through it all, Diddy remained in the storm's center, his voice echoing in clips, his face splashed across every headline, but no longer in control of the narrative. The court of public opinion had taken over.
No deal that the U.S. Attorney's Office can offer, and it's certainly not one that Diddy will accept. It would involve decades in federal prison. We're talking about mandatory minimum sentences of 10 years for both the drug charges and the sex trafficking.
Clip's 7 artists started picking sides. Fast. Some backed away immediately, putting distance between themselves and Diddy like the floor beneath him was radioactive. Silent unfollows, canceled collabs, last-minute statements about reassessing. Partnerships. You could feel the panic ripple through the industry. Nobody wanted to be next. Others tried to play it safe, neutral, posting vague PR-approved messages about due process and letting the facts come out without saying Diddy's name once. In the music game, alliances run deep, but so does self-preservation. When a heavyweight falls, everyone feels the shake. And then there were the ones who saw it as an opportunity. Artists who had clashed with Diddy in the past, who'd been iced out, blocked, or brushed off, popped up like, told you. They didn't hold back. Subtle shade, not so subtle IG lives, years of buried tension bubbling up in real time. Old wounds suddenly looked a lot more valid. Meanwhile, those still tied to Diddy, whether by business, friendship, or history, stayed quiet. Too quiet. Because in moments like this, silence speaks loud. The big names who had always been in MIA, his corner, vanished. That ghosting, it said everything. This wasn't just a Diddy scandal anymore. It was an industry reckoning. And once the footage hit the internet, it was game over. Social media detonated, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, it all. Lit up in seconds. Reactions flew. Memes dropped before the courtroom echo even faded. Hot takes hit harder than press releases. Conspiracy threads spun wild theories. TikTokers broke down the audio word by word like it was a lost verse from a classic diss track. It too became the moment. A digital wildfire. Diddy's courtroom outburst? It didn't just go viral, it went immortal. Instagram stories, TikTok stitches, YouTube reactions, every corner of the internet joined the frenzy. The culture didn't just react, it took over. And once the social fire started burning, traditional media couldn't help but follow. Headlines multiplied. News segments ran loops of Diddy's voice while analysts tried to make sense of it all. Commentary shows went full throttle. This wasn't just courtroom coverage. It was a cultural earthquake. And beneath all the noise, all the media chaos, one truth stood tall. This was never just a legal battle. It was the latest and loudest chapter in one of hip-hop's most infamous feuds, Diddy vs. 50 Cent. This beef, legendary. It goes way back, nearly 2 decades deep. It started in the early 2000s, when 50 was running the charts like a warlord, dropping platinum albums and calling out industry giants with zero hesitation. Diddy, already a mogul by then, was one of the few who dared to spar back, but that was just the beginning. Now, with this courtroom chaos and 50's bombshell Netflix documentary, it's not just beef anymore. It's a takeover.
I hope things are all right for him internally.
Speaking on?
I mean, at the crib. Because in the statement they mentioned this.
Diddy was already a major force, a mogul, a kingpin, a self-made icon who shaped the sound of a generation, but that's exactly what made him the perfect target. And 50? He saw the bullseye from a mile away. He didn't sneak in with subliminals. He kicked the front door down. Direct shots, ruthless jabs, zero respect. From the jump, 50 made it clear. He wasn't scared of Diddy's name, his money, or his legacy. And that was the spark. From there, the feud became legendary. A Cold War fought in interviews, cryptic, posts, diss tracks, and red carpet side-eyes. Fans took sides. Artists chose alliances. Every few years, it would flare back up, like an old wound that never fully healed, and every time, it got uglier. But the first real explosion? That came in 2006. 50 dropped a track that wasn't just a diss, it was a declaration. The song lit up headlines, and the beef was no longer behind the scenes. From that moment on, it was on, and 50 kept swinging. He clowned Diddy's business moves, called him fake, accused him of fronting for the cameras while hiding the truth behind closed doors. And Diddy? For years, he stayed chill. Always the smooth operator. Always in control. No matter what 50 said. He played it cool, like the jabs didn't bother him, until now. Because this time, the heat didn't come from a track or an IG post. It came from a Netflix documentary and an explosive courtroom moment that pulled every skeleton straight out of the closet. Flipped the game. He didn't just expose Diddy. He orchestrated the exposure, timed it perfectly with Diddy's legal storm, dropped the doc like a missile, and sat back as the courtroom played the audio for the world to hear. This wasn't random. It was surgical, calculated, merciless, brilliant. That documentary didn't just rake in views, it peeled back the mask. From shady deals to wild, incriminating conversations, 50 laid it all out with receipts. And once that audio echoed through the courtroom, Diddy's polished image cracked hard. This wasn't just another PR headache or a media cycle he could spin away. This was real. This was loud. This was 50 Cent doing what he's always done, but on a whole new level. He didn't just throw shade, he flipped the switch on a spotlight. Now Diddy's not just facing charges, he's facing the music. And this time, he can't dance around it. So whether you think 50's out here seeking justice or just taking revenge, one thing's crystal clear. He's not done. And Diddy? He's in the fight of his life, not just in court, but in the eyes of the culture. But now we want to hear from you. Is Diddy's reputation finished? Or can the mogul bounce back from the blow? Drop your take in the comments. Smash that like button and hit subscribe because this saga, far from over. The next chapter is coming fast, and trust us, you don't want to miss it. See you on the next one. Cue outro beat, fade to black.